Welcome to the Registered Investment Advisor Podcast, where financial services marketing expert Seth Green interviews experts, executives, and top producers to share can't-miss tips on how they successfully manage their financial service firms, grow their businesses, create great relationships, and influence the industry. And now, here's your host.
Greetings, everybody. Today, I am here. I'm really excited about today's podcast. I'm going to be interviewing Alma Johns from Bench Capital Advisory. She specializes in mergers and acquisitions. She has a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to digging in here. First, I want to know a little more about you, Alma. I want you to tell my viewers about you. How did you get started in the financial services, and what made you specialize in M&A?
Well, when you say financial services, I have to go back 30 years ago. I don't look at on Zoom, but I've been around a few times around the block. So I started my career at a Japanese subsidiary in the Philippines. I would say maybe 30 years ago, I would say. And then I moved to Canada about 2.5 decades ago and started working for, in the corporate banking with a Japanese bank. And then since then, I did my MBA and then came down to commercial because I wanted to build my family. So I went from corporate banking down to commercial banking, dealing with what you call small or SME or small and mid-sized companies. So no longer the large Toyota and Honda, but, down into, owner operated businesses. And then 10 years ago, I left the bank. I got a little bit bored and started to venture on my own and kind of have a dream of establishing my own corporate finance. And then subsequently, 5 years later, I got ushered into the mergers and acquisitions or M&A world because of a friend that I met down in Massachusetts. So it's been fun since then. There was a little bit of slowdown during COVID, but now we're taking off again. And I want to get the word out there, especially to the Canadian Christian business communities and including the Northeast as well. So New York State, anybody there is more than welcome. Any business owner or any potential buyer, you can get in touch with me. We will provide the information later on.
That is great. Now, you're president of Bench Capital. Tell me about your role. Tell me, give me an example of your day-to-day and tell me about how you evaluate businesses that come to you guys. Give me your methodology.
Yeah, so first of all, I do a lot of business development and marketing. I do have a back office that help me market, and I do have a back office that helps me with the financial analysis and preparing information about the companies that are going to market. But my day primarily involves talking to business owners. It could be a CEO, a founder, it could be a president of a company. They come in so many different forms, but my ideal target clients really are, business owners that are looking to retire. And typically they're in their maybe early 60s to mid 70s or late 70s. That's the core of my clients. And say, for example, a typical profile of a business owner would be somebody who either founded the company 30 years ago or maybe inherited it from his father or mother or father-in-law. And then they run this business for, say, 25 to 35 years. And then now they're looking at a retirement. And so I basically meet them, find out more about their business, understand what motivates them to retire, because some of them, even though they're in their 60s, they tend to hold on to the business a little bit longer. But then there's a lot of, issues. We don't want the issue to come before they start selling the business, because what happens is you don't want to fire sell the business. You don't want to get into that position. So it takes years of planning before you get there. And if you don't plan ahead of time, then there's other ways that we really have to kind of strategize on how to go to market to make your business sellable. But anyways.
So you have a background in corporate banking at MUFG. Did that help you hone your skills for the M&A?
Absolutely. So a lot of the M&A practitioners right now are either former investment bankers or commercial bankers or
Okay.
corporate bankers. Some of them have legal background. They were, say, for example, working for a law firm as a corporate lawyer. Some of them are accountants. Some of them were business owners. And the thing is, you shouldn't be getting into the M&A business unless you have a solid background, whether you're, looking at, you've looked at companies from the trenches, or you've looked at companies from outside in, and outside in being a trusted advisor, like an accountant, a lawyer, or a banker, somebody that has that background dealing with business owners in the past,
Mhm.
and then able to transport, or I would say, how do you call it, the terminology I forgot, but anyway, you're able to transport that knowledge from your previous role
Okay.
into the role of an M&A advisor. And
And,
three things
and
about characteristics of an M&A advisor. Number one,
okay.
you're a psychologist. Number two, you're a um, a technical person, and number three, you're a salesperson. I
Yeah.
mean, not necessarily in that order, but those three is almost like one third, one third, one third of what
Gotcha.
makes up a great M&A advisor. You have to
Okay.
have those three elements, otherwise, you're not going to be able to do your job well.
Wonderful. And you have over 20 years of experience evaluating businesses for institutional funding, and geez,
Yes,
you
yes,
managed
I have
1.6 billion in credit facilities at RBC.
probably more. That was my
Wow.
last role. But, in that span of, say, 2.5 decades of constantly looking, reading financial statements, talking to business owners, talking to, credit approvers, like what we call in the banking community adjudicators, it really gives you an insight into how businesses are operated.
Okay.
And yeah, it really is very helpful, because without that background, you're not able to gauge a business if it's sellable within, say, less than 30 minutes. So you have to be able
Okay.
to talk to the business owners, look at the financial statements, and be able to come to a conclusion that, yeah, this is a sellable business, no, this isn't a sellable business, and you have to wait for a little bit before you actually go to market.
Okay. And you publish articles in Profit Guide, Canadian Business, Canadian Metalworking. Give me a couple of key takeaways from those articles that my audience is going to love to hear.
Okay, so wow, there's so many numerous points, but I think the most important thing is preparedness, whether it's from an operational standpoint or from an emotional standpoint. Now,
Okay.
from an operational standpoint, if you're thinking of selling your business, think like years. Like, say, for example, 3 to 5 years. So what do you want the outcome to be? How much money do you need in order to retire? So let's just pick a magic number. Let's just say that you need $5 million. So $5 million will get you retired at, say, age of 65 or 70 years old, because business owners are very hardworking. They get bored after a while, so they have to get to a certain age. So preparedness is very important, because there's tax considerations, there's legal considerations, and then there's also that EBITDA, or value, or how do you call this, valuation consideration, because you can't get to that valuation unless you're prepared. Like, say, for example, your business is doing $250,000, but you want to retire with 5 million. That's not possible. In order for you to get to that 5 million, you have to get to that 1 million mark, which takes you to, 1 million mark multiplied by 5 times of your EBITDA, then you can get the $5 million valuation. And when I say 1 million mark, that's equivalent to your earnings before income tax, depreciation and amortization, or EBITDA, not the revenue. So in order to get there, what is your EBITDA margin? So that would probably entail, on a $1 million EBITDA, you could be doing 5 million and up in sales. So again, depending on your target, if you can retire with the $1 million, that's perfectly fine. If you want to go to the 5 million and 10 million, you probably have to work a little bit harder.
Okay.
So, different businesses come in different sizes and different
Sure.
comfort level, and the size of dreams of the owners. Some business people are not satisfied with a 5 million retirement. They might want to be, how do you call this, get involved in philanthropy and want to get to $100 million. So they might have to work harder or wait a little bit, later to retire. So different people, different objectives. And then, so I said preparedness. And then I think the other thing is emotional preparedness. If you are a person that don't have hobbies, maybe take on something else and really think, what am I going to do if I retire 2 years from now? Because if you get bored, you might end up going back, or last minute throughout that M&A process that you've been working on for several months, you kind of have a cold feet, which is not good for you because there's some legal implications there. So I think those are the most important. Get your ducks in a row, have your records and financial statements and everything else, any systems and procedures. And the other thing that's important in part of that preparedness is make sure that if you walk away from the business for, say, 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, the business does not fall apart. The business is not dependent upon you because you have your second in command, you have your third in command, and you got your org structure properly done.
Now, do you jump in and assist and make sure all of that's in place? And I can see your passion for it, and that's wonderful. So tell me about your strategies and then give me a success story.
Yeah, so there's I would say a success story would be, I think my youngest client was 58 years old. And I think that the most successful part of the story there is he was able to build a business from, zero into, say, a $10 million business. Let's just, pick a number out there. I'm not able to disclose anything. And then he has, salespeople across the country. He has, managers in place that if he actually leaves the business, like, say, take a vacation, he's able to take a vacation. But it's not always the best scenario. And he also has a very special product that was valuable to whatever industry he's serving. So the other thing, again, preparedness, is to have that very strong key differentiator that you're not a commodity. And if you are a commodity, you create something that's what you call core competencies that clients will remember you, or your customers will remember you and keep going back to you as a service provider or a products provider versus somebody else. So so that was one of my success story, and I can't disclose a lot because that's so a lot of those are sensitive information, but
Understood.
we were able to sell that business for 20% premium over what a typical buyers would offer, just because there
sure
was
a
that
happy client.
plan. Yeah.
I'm sure there was a happy client. And I mean, there's obviously things that set you and your group apart from, I don't want to use the word run of the mill M&A advisory firm, but what are the core competencies of you and your firm that set you apart?
Yeah, so again, you can't preach to other people and not have that core competency itself. I think, and which in my case could be a double-edged sword. The customer service here that we provide is top of the line, and everybody says, oh yeah, we got great customer service. And to me, being responsive and being available to your client, especially when you're in that process where you become very, very emotional, you have to be able to listen to your client when they ask you questions, or sometimes they have this uncertainties and a feeling of, my goodness, I'm not ready. You have to be able to listen. That's one thing. And there are some M&A advisors out there that are willing to listen, but some clients would just like to have somebody to hear them out and talk. So for us, it's that level of white glove. We call it a white glove service. And then the other thing that we pride ourselves is the quality of information that we put out there. We have had a lot of really great positive feedback, because for the companies, for our size of target of companies, some would just simply put together like a 5 to 10 pages and put it out there. Some are sort of back in a napkin kind of M&A advisors. But for us, we pride ourselves in the quality of information that we put out. It's got all, company overview, it's got industry study, it's got like top 10 customers, for example. It's got graphs of where the locations, where the stores or retail, if it's a retail store or whether it's a head office or whatnot. It's got a location, how far is it from Buffalo, something like that, so that it allows the buyer to envision what the periphery of their immediate, geographic location. And then it would highlight the company's key differentiators, what makes them unique. We always have that several points. Some clients have 5 points, some clients have 10 points of what is their strongest suite that will allow them to be very successful once a buyer takes over the business, something like that. So a couple of things. I think the most important thing is we have the knowledge and experience dealing with business owners because of my background, and then quality of materials that we put out there, and that white glove service that we provide. Being accessible to the client when they need you is very, very critical.
Okay. Tell me about awards and recognitions and industry affiliations.
Well, industry affiliations, I wouldn't say that we have a lot. I've been a member of the Canadian Christian Business Federation for quite some time, and I attend the meetings from time to time. I'm connected to some of the people there. There are some Canadian Christian businesses that we're affiliated in. I'm also part of the M&A Club, which is very, very active. I'm co-president of the York region chapter of the M&A Club. So it's just a gathering of M&A advisors and deal makers. We call ourselves deal makers. So we're in touch of have our pulse on what is happening in the market. So we meet on right now. We meet on a weekly basis just because of the event that we're preparing for. But we meet regularly. It could be once a month, twice a month, just to exchange information, find out what's happening out there. And that club has lawyers, accountants, bankers, other service providers, obviously some buying groups like private equity, family offices, because that's our market for selling our companies to. So that's part of, and there's also other memberships with organizations that, like I was a member of the Ontario Ontario Aerospace Council, because I have a lot of clients in aerospace and defense.
Oh, okay.
So,
Now, you mentioned the Canadian Christian Business Association. So tell me how do your
Business
Christian
Federation.
beliefs, Business Federation, how do your Christian beliefs affect the way you do business? And like, for instance, the way you select a client?
Yeah, so the way we select a client, I would say all my clients are not necessarily Christian. Some of them are
Right.
Catholic, some of them are Christian, some of them are believers, but
Mhm.
I don't preclude non-Christian business
Right.
owners. But I think the most important thing is to be able to, I would say that when you have that background, you have that faith background, it increases your credibility that you're not going to do something terrible to the
Right.
people that you're dealing with, that you will always act in integrity. And that integrity is not because of your reputation, but it's more like faith based. Like you have that embedded in your DNA that you're a Christian
Right.
and you're not supposed to do that, right? The golden
Absolutely.
rule got to be there all the time. And sometimes, some people criticize me as being soft, but being soft is not always a disadvantage. Obviously, you're going to negotiate for your client and advocate for them as much as you possibly can, because after all, you're serving that client's interest. But you have to be able to meet halfway through and have that reasonableness on both sides. Like, you represent the seller, but you also have to be considerate with the buyer. But after all, they're the ones that writing the check, right? So
Absolutely.
that level of integrity that comes with being a follower of Jesus is very critical. And I don't want to, make that as a selling point there.
Right.
I don't want to, market it too much. I don't want to sound like, we're virtue signaling, but it's integral to me as a human being, as a person,
Sure.
that you're able to have that hang in the background, that if you do something, that little voice, and it's not like for some people they call it conscience, but for us we call it like the Holy Spirit is telling you don't do that, you know.
Right.
You've
That's
gotten a
it.
little too far, then you backtrack again. And even if
Right.
you attempt to do something wrong, which I don't, you know, but sometimes, you know, we're inherently sinful in nature. You just have that feeling or some nagging
Right.
in your some voice in your mind that tells,
The
oh,
still
maybe you've
small
gone a
voice.
little too far, you know,
Absolutely.
and then you back on track again.
Tell me about your approach at building, maintaining relationships with your clients and even industry partners as well. Um, how's that contributed to your success?
Um, you know, M&A, just like any trusted advisory practice, is all about trust. And you really have to develop that trust with the client. Number one, that you're going to do what you want to do. And if you fail, say, for example, you have a deliverable. Okay, I'll get it to you, say, Wednesday next week. And then Monday and Tuesday, you had emergency meeting with another client and you can't get that done. So uh, you call that person, you call that client and apologize. I am sorry, I was on the road yesterday. I know I said I was going to deliver it to you by 12 o'clock. Can you give me a couple of hours? My analyst and I will crunch the numbers and get it to you, you know, at 2 o'clock, say, for example, because things happen. And more
They do.
often than not, your client will understand because they too have been in similar situations, if not, you know, regularly. Sometimes it's an
Mhm.
everyday situation for them that you really have to be adaptable. And that's just the age that we're, you know, I think that's just the environment right now that we can get called into something that's, you know, more of an emergency. You know, sometimes I do sometimes question myself, oh my goodness, did I just lose my integrity? But if you communicate and assure them that things are going to get done, they're typically forgiving. And it doesn't happen all the time, obviously. And also, like say Christmas, you send them a card, or some people you send a gift to. So that's part of not buying their attention, but just continuing to let them know that yes, I'm here, I'm still here, you know, reminding them that you're still around. And even though when you close a transaction, obviously you're going to have to really continue to communicate with that client because you never know when they're going to do their next deal. And I do have a client like that still asks me for, you know, everything like, oh, I need money from the bank. Can you help me? You know, I sold my other business. I need help from the bank. Or my line of credit is only $1 million and I want to get like $2 million more because we're in a growth mode right now. So there's those situations that, you know,
Sure.
you should be ready to help at all
And
times.
it's good. It's a relationship business and most star. And
It is a relationship business,
you've
both
kind of
with the
excelled at
buyers and the sellers and your service providers.
that.
And we do referrals. I do refer clients too. Like if I know something that might add value to somebody, even if it's not
Okay.
directly a client, you just kind of think about it. You know, I have a mentor as well, and my mentor, you know, it's not purely a business relationship. It's more like, you know, he's mentoring me and we meet from
Mhm.
time to time. But if I think about something that might help him, then I would send, hey, look at this email or look at this newspaper article or look what this guy's doing in this industry. And it's you become top of mind of somebody, right?
Now, you mentioned the mentor. So I want to give you an opportunity to mini mentor right now. If you could speak to a person out of college that's thinking about getting into M&A, what advice would you give
Yes, a couple of things I would say, and I do mentor a lot of those students.
them?
You know, in Toronto, we have a hockey team called the Maple Leafs, and there's the Marlies.
Yeah,
Marlies is the farm team, right? So
right.
I always think of our company as a Marlies for M&A or corporate finance people want to be. And
Mhm.
I hire a lot of interns. And I know sometimes, yeah, you do use their skill, their financial ability to crunch numbers, but sometimes they don't look beyond that. There's, you know, that's just 10% of the job, 20% of the job, and 80% of the job is something that you will never learn at school. So I train them, I give them live deals. Obviously, there's a confidentiality agreement that we sign with each of those interns, but they move on to become investment bankers with capital markets. I have a really, really great kid that I hired when he was still in the second year and did phenomenally well after he left. But going back to the advice, number one, really, really work on your skills. But in saying that, it's not just what you learn at school, but try to get yourself like an internship for companies like ours and get your feet wet there, because you're going to learn a ton more than you will ever learn in your like year one or year two program in either MBA or your BBA. And then the other thing is network, network, network. If you want to apply for an internship, do not throw like applications on LinkedIn or send a barrage of email. Go out to networking events, find them where they are, and just meet a ton of people, because your next job could be from that networking event, not from, how many hundreds of resumes you throw out there on LinkedIn. So those are my two advice. Build your
Now,
skills, your financial skills, and then network. So that
great.
will set you for life.
That is great advice. And now,
Build the
are there
relationships.
specific industries or preferable industries that you have or the firm has that you really enjoy working with more than others?
I really enjoy working on the industrial side because like anything that's sort of metal related, just because that industry is never going to go away in even 100 years, it's not something that you can't replace. There's that tangibility to it that it will
Okay.
never go away. Anything that's sort of bricks and mortar or physical will not be replaced by, I'm not going to say never, but maybe certain aspects of it will be replaced by AI, but maybe the building of it will be replaced by AI to some degree. But a building is a building. That physical tangibility will never go away. So anything that's sort of metal related, anything that's sort of building materials related, I like. And I also like the healthcare industry, because in Canada, we're a government funded
Yes.
healthcare system. So there's that level of stability, recurring income. I like those things and a few others. I don't typically deal with maybe hospitality or like very, very much IT related that is very, very technical that I can't
Okay.
grasp myself. So it has to be something that I understand. So if I'm presented with information and I don't understand it, I'd rather hand it over to somebody that perhaps that specialty in that specific industry, just to be more candid. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, wealth of information. This is great. I want you to tell my readers, listeners, and viewers how they reach you. How do they get in contact with you? If they have a business they want to sell, buy, they're interested in something relative to M&A, how do they reach Madam Alma Johns?
Yeah, so they can reach me at alma.johns@benchcapital.ca. That's my email. I'm not sure if I should give my number out here, but I'm also available at LinkedIn. I don't know what my LinkedIn handle is, but if you type Alma
Yeah,
Johns Bench Capital, I will
that's how
likely
we
pop
met.
up on your screen.
That's how we connected on LinkedIn. Yes.
So I mean, best way to reach me is either email or LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is always on. I may not necessarily be working on it or be in it, but it's
Right.
always on my screen, like all the
Okay.
time. So
Okay.
I can be reached there as well.
And right now, are you guys looking for any particular type of merger or acquisition? Are you actively searching out a particular kind of client right
Right now, we have a mandate. We have a sell side mandates, but those I can handle myself. But if there's anybody out there that is in the HVAC or HVAC industry, anything that's sort of mechanical, we have a mandate that I expect to come up next week. So if there's an owner of a mechanical, whether it's plumbing or HVAC business, that's probably doing anywhere from 3 million to say 10 or 20 million dollars, please reach out because we have this mandate that going to come very, very soon. That's for now, but we're
Okay.
always open to any industry or even any advice. I mean, if a seller or owner wants to reach out, be more than happy to give some advice on a non-committed basis. I'm not going to say, hey, I gave you an hour or two of my time, sell with me. It's not that. I mean, if it will benefit another advisor, all the best. We're all frenemies, we compete with each other, friends and enemies, we compete with each other, but it's a very, very collaborative environment.
Okay.
We don't we don't compete in a bad way.
That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. So listen, I want to thank you for your time today, and I want to tell my listeners and viewers, this has been Carl McKinney, co-hosting with Seth Green on the RIA podcast, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to speak with Alma Johns from Bench Capital Advisors in Toronto, Canada. Any final, you want to give us your contact information once again, Alma?
Yeah, so it's alma.johns@benchcapital.ca. CA is Canada, by the way. And then you can reach me on LinkedIn. Just type Alma Johns and then perhaps Bench Capital, and then you can reach me there. And by the way, Carl, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
This has been quite a very insightful conversation. So hopefully we can get together again, and I'd be more than happy to send some people your way.
Absolutely. Thank you and have a great day.
You too, Carl.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.